Now, imagine if I had reacted out of my own emotions, like done what I said I felt like doing. What do you mean? That means you're not going to be here with us. And why wouldn't you want to be with us? And I miss you. And that's crazy. Now it's all about me. Now I'm not going to gather any information of what's going on. And she's going to feel completely unheard.
And she's going to shut down.
Yeah, she's going to shut down.
Yeah. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey there, welcome. What a delight it is to get to spend some time with you each and every week for each and every episode. Hey, if you're finding value, would you go back, find your favorite episode, or if you say, wow, I think this is my favorite episode, would you just hit that little share button and share it out to your social group over on Instagram, into Facebook, wherever you happen to do your social gathering digitally. We would love it if you would just share, because I know that there is someone in your network who's dealing with blended family challenges and they could use some help. And so why not share that with them?
Yeah.
So we appreciate your trust in that. Hey, hun, how about we hop into today's topic?
Sounds good. Today, we're tackling a really sensitive topic. How to respond when your child seems to be pulling away or distancing themselves from you and your home.
Ooh, painful.
Yeah, and this can show up in different ways. Maybe they start resisting visitation time. Maybe they back out of some family plans that you've made. Or maybe they ask to change the schedule, which means less time with you. Sometimes it feels like a sudden shift. It comes out of nowhere and it hits you hard. Other times it's a slow burn, kind of a growing pattern over time. Either way, when you're the parent on the receiving end, it's incredibly painful. I know that pain personally.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Do. That's
yeah.
right. I remember how hard it was for you and how hurtful things were when those kinds of things were said by Annika, your daughter, honey.
Yeah.
You were trying to process all of it, and I didn't always know how to help or what to say in the moment. I probably said a lot of stupid things back then, right?
It's
and
just confusing.
honestly, yeah, it was. And I felt pretty darn helpless too as a step parent. It's hard to know how to respond when a child is pulling away or seems like they're losing interest in being a part of your family's life.
It really is. And I wanted to respond well in those moments to manage the situation with wisdom and with some grace. But I was also crushed. I was hurting. It was hard.
Yeah.
Now, part of our journey included some intense seasons, even walking through parental alienation. But what we want to talk about today are the more common moments when a child starts pulling away and there seems to be a lot of ambiguity. You just don't understand what's happening or why. Our hope is that by sharing our story, you'll be able to learn from some of our past mistakes and from the valuable lessons that we've picked up along the way in dealing with these kinds of really difficult interactions with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with a little bit of a story from our journey that wasn't really extreme, but it still stirred up some pretty challenging emotions. So up to this point, we had Annika 50% of the time. And of course, we had two mutual kids with us full time, right? And honey, you and I both worked really hard to include Annika in everything we possibly could. Camping trips, vacations, holiday events, special activities, like you name it. We were really diligent in trying to plan things so that she could be with us.
Right.
And it took a lot of effort and planning to make that all kind of work around her schedule. But it was important to us, so we did it. We wanted her to know that she belonged and that she wasn't missing out on all these special experiences with our family.
That's right. But as she got older, things started to shift, right? Her friendships became more important. She had sports and extracurriculars, and it seemed like our family plans just didn't sound all that fun to her anymore. She started to turn up her nose at the plans we'd made during her visitation time and asking to do her own thing instead. Right.
And it kind of felt like we didn't matter to her anymore by that point. Like she didn't really appreciate the time and the effort that we put in to create those experiences just so she could feel included. I suppose at the age she was, she probably didn't appreciate that.
Yeah. So if you're listening right now and you've ever felt unimportant or unappreciated by one of your kids or stepkids, please hear this. You are not alone. We have felt that, and so have many other couples in blended families. And this happens in first family dynamics as well, because when kids hit adolescence and their focus and their interests start to shift, that's normal. But I think it's harder for a parent with limited time with their child to understand and to accept this shift because you treasure and you cherish that 50% or whatever percent of the time that you have with them. And when their interest starts to expand outside of your home, it's just so heartbreaking. At least it really was for me.
Yeah. So when we were in the middle of all of this, we were a bit blindsided. You know, Annika had always seemed to enjoy our time together. She used to be excited about family adventures, but when she started to pull away, it really hit hard, especially for you, honey, because you only had her half time. And the thought of that time being reduced even more or her skipping out on special moments was really tough for you. Like, how would you describe what that felt like?
I felt disappointment. I felt devastation. I was definitely sad and confused and honestly kind of desperate. Like I just wanted her to want to be with us. And I didn't understand why she was pulling away or how to stop it from happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, I think in those moments, it's a little different for me, but I felt some frustration and pretty powerless, actually. I just felt like I didn't have any ability to do anything. Now, let's shift gears and talk about one of the more intense moments, like when your child says something like, I just want to be at my dad's more. I don't want to be here so much. Those happened with us too. And they were really gut-wrenching words that we heard from Annika as she kind of got closer to her preteen, teen years. And it really did. Even by then, it felt like it was coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. My ex and I, we had been co-parenting relatively peaceful for many years. Annika had been in this 50-50 custody arrangement since she was 2 years old, so that had always been what she knew. So when she hit 12 and made that statement, I just want to be at my dad's, I was shocked. I felt all of those same emotions, disappointment, sadness, confusion, desperation, but this time it was magnified.
Yeah. And you know what? Over the years, as we've worked with more and more couples, we've realized this isn't unique to us.
No.
We've heard that same story over and over again. Because as kids mature, they start exploring new preferences, new friends and fashion and music. And yes, even how they want to manage their own living situation. Right? For kids in dual households, especially during the turbulent teen years, the idea of reducing this back and forth transition can sound like a relief to them. They want things to be easier, and honestly, they want it to be a little more in their control.
Exactly. But what they don't realize is the ripple effect. They're not thinking long term. Now, we didn't know it at the time, but my daughter was being influenced by her dad around this request, and that happens too in blended families. Kids can feel stuck in the middle, and they start to believe that they have to choose between mom and dad.
If you happen to think that your child could be getting pulled away or influenced by the other parent, we'll be covering that in a couple of weeks. But for now, let's just focus on how to respond in the moment when your child just starts pulling away and you're not really sure what to do or say to them. So we're going to share 3 tips that can help you to move forward with some wisdom and some clarity, even when your heart is hurting. And we'll also explore this question. Once kids reach a certain age, should they get to choose where they want to live? That can be pretty confusing. So we're going to talk about that after we share these 3 tips to help you navigate a challenging moment with your child. All right, honey, what's the first tip?
Tip number 1, regulate your own emotions.
That seems to be the tip number 1 for every relational interaction.
It's key. And let's be honest, when a child opts out of your family adventure or says they want to be with their other parent, it hurts. It's like a dagger to the heart. You might feel rejected, scared, angry, betrayed, or even panicked. Most of those emotions are rooted in fear, guilt, or insecurity. Right? Is my child pulling away from me emotionally? Am I losing them? What did I do wrong?
But here's the challenging truth. Those emotions are more about you than they are about the child. If you want to navigate those kind of moments well, you've got to start by regulating your own emotions. You need to be able to separate what you're feeling internally from what your child truly needs from you. Now, that might mean you're going to have to find a way to compartmentalize in the moment and work through your own emotions a little bit later with another trusted adult, like your spouse, a wise friend, a counselor, or a coach. If you work with a counselor or coach, please make sure they have blended family experience. You don't have to go through this alone, but you're going to need to follow the same type of instructions that they give you on an airplane, right? Hey, in case of emergency, when the oxygen mask comes down, put your own mask on before you help your child or other people with theirs, right? Because as soon as you get dysregulated, and then you're going to kind of guide everybody through a whole dysregulation process.
It's going to all go downhill from there.
That's right.
Right. If you aren't managing your own emotions first, you will not have the ability to support your child and show up well for them. In other words, don't make the conversation about you. That'll have a negative impact on the situation because your child won't feel heard or understood in a way that's helpful.
Yeah. If you need to, take a little bit of time to regulate your own emotions before continuing the conversation with the child, okay? If you have to take a little break, do that. And then once you're grounded, you're ready to be fully present and engage in a really healthy way, then you can come back and talk through it. If you need to learn how to regulate your emotions, like specifically, we can certainly help you to develop some practical tools to do that. Just reach out to us.
Yeah. When I experience the sting of disappointment or even thinking that I've failed as a mom, this just isn't a good place for me emotionally. Over the years, all 3 of our kids have said and done hurtful things, and they've made some poor choices that tend to trigger emotions in me, such as insignificant, unloved, devalued, unappreciated. I know that if I allow myself to wallow in these painful emotions in the moment, it's only a matter of time before I react.
Right.
I might get angry and lash out or assign blame and become critical. I might start to shut down and distance myself or be tempted to just give up. Or sometimes I'd become depressed, blame myself, or punish myself with some kind of self-destructive habit. I mean, it just is not good. When something with one or more of my kids goes sideways and I'm blindsided with painful emotions, if I'm not able to manage those emotions well, then I react in ways that just don't help. The fact is, these unhelpful reactions most likely will make things worse in the long run, and I might look back with some regret about how I handled that.
Sure.
The bottom line is that emotional reactivity will most likely push your children further away and risk your ability to positively influence them and support them well. I've had to learn how to manage my emotions, which are very real and raw, without reacting in ways that could cause relational damage with my kids. Now, if you'd like to discover how I've learned to regulate myself in emotionally messy circumstances with each of my kids, you can check out the link in the show notes to episode 184, which dropped last Mother's Day, but the concepts that I share there apply to everyday parenting for both moms and dads.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, let's move on to tip number 2, honey. What's that?
All right, so first we're regulating our emotions.
Absolutely.
Tip 2 is to listen, to understand, and validate. Dr. Stephen Covey once said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yet, in the heat of tough parenting conversations, many of us do just the opposite, right? We push for our kids to understand us. But if you want to build trust and connection, it really starts with listening. Not just hearing, but deeply listening. And one of the most effective tools for truly understanding your child is asking good questions, not lecturing or telling them what they should be thinking or feeling, but instead getting curious and asking open-ended questions. Man, do I love to give a good lecture.
Yeah, you're good at lecturing.
I am great at that. And I've had to work really hard at figuring out, how am I going to show up with questions so I can listen?
Yeah, lecturing just builds the wall. Here it
totally
comes.
Does. Yeah. Here's a few questions you might be able to try in one of these difficult moments where your child's pulling away or saying that they want to spend more time at the other home. What do you think would be better for you if you did spend more time at your dad's? What's been happening here that's made things hard for you? Tell me a little more about how this change would help. Or help me understand what's causing you to want to back out of this activity with our family. We can approach the conversation calmly and curiously, even when it hurts. When kids feel safe and they feel heard, they're much more likely to open up and share what's really going on beneath the surface. And that is important information for you.
Yes, this is such an important part of parenting, because if you really want to truly understand what's going on under the surface with your child, you've got to shift into fact-finding mode. And that means asking good questions, gathering information without judgment or trying to make them feel differently or see things differently.
Yeah, think about that for a second. How much do you like it when other people tell you what you're supposed to think? Our kids are the same. I mean, I know we think that, they're young and we need to teach them and they should adopt our philosophy and thought process. But truth is, they just don't all the time.
Yeah, they're still people. They still need to be heard and understood.
Yeah.
So when I was able to do this with my daughter, Annika, to listen, I discovered that what seemed small to me was actually a big deal for her. She was growing up. She was starting to get into makeup and hair products and fashion. And she had a few favorite items too, especially an old alarm clock.
Oh, the old alarm clock. Yeah.
That she just had to bring with her every single week. This thing was attached to her at the hip, it seemed like.
I know. What an interesting attachment.
I know. Yeah. Packing and hauling all of her stuff back and forth was exhausting and frustrating for her. This was underneath her request to spend more time at her dad's, her initial request when this first started coming up.
Yeah, totally. So, honey, how frustrating was it for you to hear about those complaints that Annika was making?
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was hurtful. I mean, an alarm clock and some lip gloss felt like they were taking priority over spending time with us. I mean, that's crazy.
Okay, so what were you really tempted to say in the moment?
I wanted to tell her she was being ridiculous, that she shouldn't be so attached to stuff. But I paused, thankfully, in this time at least, and I made a choice to not react. Instead, I decided to affirm her frustration. Even though it all seemed silly to me, because I realized that her perspective was different than mine. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not the one moving back and forth. She's got a different perspective. Those items mattered to her, and constantly moving them felt like a huge hassle. It was very real for her.
And so you said, I decided to affirm her frustration. Can you help what does that actually sound like?
I can see why that's frustrating for you, honey.
Oh, I love that. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Right. It's not, oh, honey, you are so right. What a pain in the butt. And no, it's not of that. It's just, boy, I can really see why that's frustrating for you.
Yeah.
Right. So simple.
Yeah.
So you put your own perspective aside, that feeling like this is ridiculous. You took that deep breath, like putting on your oxygen mask to regulate your own emotions first, right?
Right.
So that you could stay connected and present with Annika right in that moment.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Now imagine if I had reacted out of my own emotions, like done what I said I felt like doing. What do you mean? That means you're not going to be here with us. And why wouldn't you want to be with us? And I miss you. And that's crazy. Now it's all about me. Now I'm not going to gather any information of what's going on. And she's going to feel completely unheard.
And she's going to shut down.
Yeah, she's going to shut down.
Yeah.
But instead, I validated her frustration was valid. You know what? Honestly, if I had to pack up and move all of my stuff every few days, it would feel like living out of a suitcase. That would stink.
Yep.
I would hate it.
Yep.
And you know what? I've noticed over the years how upset Annika would get when she forgot to pack something. It got left behind and it was important to her. And now she had to go without it for a week. That was really frustrating to her. You know, the thing about validation is that you don't have to fully agree or even understand your child's experience. At the time, I really didn't relate to being emotionally tied to hair products.
Neither did I, surprisingly enough.
No hair jokes. But now I can see how I actually do kind of relate to that years later. Here's the perfect example. A few weeks ago, we traveled to Tennessee to be guests on the Blended and Blessed event. On the plane, honey, you know that I suddenly realized, oh no, I forgot to pack my hair straightener.
I thought you were going to pull the emergency cord or something. I don't know.
I mean, in retrospect, it really shouldn't have been a big deal, right? I mean, we can just pick up a new one at Walmart, no big deal. But it actually did stress me out for quite a while on the plane. I just kept thinking, wow, I have naturally frizzy hair and there's going to be a lot of humidity in Tennessee. And I really want to look my best in front of this large audience. This is an important event. Oh, my goodness.
So you weren't regulating your emotions? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay.
So really, when I'm able to put myself in Annika's shoes, I can understand her frustration. You know, she was a teenage girl wanting to have her stuff and look her best. And so what I needed to do in that moment for my daughter was acknowledge that her frustration was real and that it mattered to her.
Yeah.
Just like you did for me on the plane.
Totally. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that, oh, you're right, we're going to change the whole schedule now because of hair products. But validating that it's real is powerful.
Yeah.
It helps the child feel seen and heard. And when they feel understood in that way, they're more likely to open up and share what's going on for them internally.
Right. That's
this
what we need.
is really what kids need in those difficult moments. And actually, when they feel seen and heard, they tend to navigate the difficulty a little bit better, even if we don't change anything.
Yeah. I mean, the research shows that just helping a child label their emotions in a tough moment calms the nervous system by up to 60%.
Absolutely.
It's true for adults too, by the way.
Yeah. So once you listened and validated her, what did you notice?
Well, her whole demeanor changed. She relaxed. She seemed relieved to get it up and out and off her chest. Here's what's happening for me. And I think we both felt more connected.
Yeah. So how did you manage to stay calm and not react emotionally? Like, how were you able to focus on listening and validating her instead? Does it ever feel like people just don't get how tough it is to blend a family? What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blended family life. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple,
creating more connection as a family,
experiencing partnership in parenting,
and even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you'll get to connect with us and maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll gain access to a variety of resources like our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated, and quality support can sometimes be expensive and hard to find. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate, because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive regardless of their budget.
So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes and click the link to join us in the Blending Together community and meet other couples just like you in our upcoming community meeting. Plus, when you join before the end of the month, you'll gain access to our brand new bonus mini course that will help you make quick headway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to meet you inside Blending Together. Just click the link all the way at the bottom of the show notes to get started.
We'll see you there. Well, that's a skill I had to learn, and I've had to learn that the hard way. I didn't come by this naturally. It took years of reacting poorly and then realizing that I wasn't showing up to be the parent I really wanted to be, or the parent that my kids needed me to be. And the skill is simple. It's emotion coaching your kids, and it changed everything for us.
Yeah, for sure. That one skill, emotion coaching. Some listeners are going, oh my gosh, they're talking about emotion coaching again. But I got to be honest, that one thing has been a game changer for our family because we took it super seriously and we practiced.
Yeah, with all three of our kids.
Yeah.
The good news is, anyone can learn this skill. You can learn this skill, and you can learn how to support your kids by helping them feel heard, understood, and acknowledged. And the beautiful part is that this sets the stage to explore possible solutions and move forward together.
That's right.
If you want to dive deeper into the skill of emotion coaching, we recommend that you check out episode 168, called Actionable Steps for Helping Kids Navigate Through Difficult Emotions and Problem Solve. It's actually a little 4-part mini-series, and it's all based on Dr. John Gottman's book, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. We'll drop the link in the show notes to make it easy for you. But honestly, it's one of the most important parenting tools that we've discovered, and we want that for you too.
Yeah, awesome.
So first, we're regulating our own emotions. Put your own oxygen mask on first. Then we're going to listen and validate. And then what's the third tip, honey?
The third one is to co-create one new action step. You know, lots of kids in step families feel powerless. So when they express frustration or ask to change the schedule, they're often reaching for a sense of control in their own lives. They didn't ask for their parents to split up and to have to move between two homes. None of this has been their choice or their fault. But here's the good news. When kids are grasping for control, you can help them experience a sense of control without just handing it over to them, right? Simply by engaging with them. So instead of shutting down the conversation because it feels uncomfortable, we actually want to try leaning in. Here's what it might sound like. Hey, thanks so much for trusting me enough to share all of this. Remember, you've already regulated your emotions and you've already validated them. So they've just shared a bunch of stuff, right? So thanks for trusting me enough to share all this. I hear how hard this is for you and I want to support you. And I'm wondering, what's one thing we might do to make things better for you?
The goal isn't to solve the problem for them. The goal is to help your child find their own next step. When kids are able to identify an actionable solution, they're much more likely to follow through and feel confident and capable with moving forward. But remember to ask them for just one idea. This helps to keep the conversation contained and less overwhelming.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then what you might get is, well, the only thing that would help is if I just go live at Dad's.
Yeah.
Right? Great. What do I do with that?
Yep.
Well, again, regulate your own emotions. And you might say something like, hey, I hear that, and I'm not ready to make any changes with the schedule right now. So with that in mind, what else might help you to make things better? Right? And just kind of redirect them. You don't have to lose it. You don't have to lose your patience.
You don't have to argue.
Redirect it. Yeah. If you have a court-ordered visitation schedule in place, you could even say something like, man, I understand you're feeling really frustrated. The schedule that we've been following was ordered by the court, and changes like that have to be considered very carefully. So what's something else that we could do right now to make things a little better for you? Yeah, just keep them on track.
Co-creating doesn't mean caving in.
Right.
It really means that you're walking with your child as you explore healthy, realistic possibilities. And if they continue to push back or they just can't come up with an idea in the moment, just listen and affirm. Again, you can never do too much listening and affirming. You might say something like, yeah, this is tough, isn't it? You know, let's both take some time to think it over and we can talk more tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then be sure to follow up. Kids often need time for their emotions to calm down and some space for internal processing.
Now, once in a while, you might get a suggestion for something that's a little smaller than a full-on visitation change, like skipping one visit with you so that they can go engage in something at the other house that they don't want to miss out on. Maybe there's a party going on over there or some kind of extended family event or whatnot. If it's reasonable, we encourage you to think about it. Be willing to at least consider the request and do your best not to take it personally. Just because they want to be with the other parent when there's something like that going on, it doesn't equal them rejecting you.
Right.
Often kids are just focused on what's the next fun thing I can be a part of. Right. The point isn't to say yes to everything they want. It's to show your child that their voice matters and their perspectives are valid. And so if you do decide to say yes to, skipping a visit once in a while, be really clear that this is a one-time exception and not the new normal. Now, by the way, don't mishear me here. I am not saying that you should work out visitation agreements with you and your child.
No.
If there's a request like that, the best course of action is to give your ex a call and say, hey, Charlie's asking if we can do this so they can be at your family event. What do you think? Shall we work this out? You need to negotiate and work out the details with your ex, not with the child.
Giving your child a voice builds trust and connection. It shows that you're empathetic and willing to work with them, but that doesn't mean we're giving them the choice or handing over all the control.
Right.
And another thing to think about, it's critical that you don't make any commitments or promises to your child without first thinking it through and discussing things with your current partner.
Yeah.
You and your spouse need to be united in whatever decisions you make. And of course, avoid making the step parent the bad guy or throwing them under the bus.
Yeah.
If the request needs to be denied to your child.
Exactly.
Be really careful.
Honey, when you were kind of co-creating one new action step with Annika around her request to spend more time at her dad's, what kind of solutions do you remember that came up?
Well, at first, she really struggled to come up with anything. So I gave her some time, and then we circled back. When she still kind of felt stuck, she was still kind of in the, well, I just need to be there more so I don't have to move my stuff. I asked this, would it be okay if I shared an idea with you, honey?
Ooh, that's good. Some of you have heard this before. Asking permission to share puts them in the driver's seat, right? When they say, sure, Mom, you can share, guess what? Their brain becomes a bit more open to considering your ideas. There's actually brain science behind that. So when you asked permission, did she say yes?
She did.
Hey, what do you know?
And most kids will.
That's right. So what idea did you float by her?
I asked, would it help if you had duplicates of your favorite things at both houses so that you didn't have to haul them all back and forth every week? And then I stayed quiet and gave her some space to think about it instead of just jumping in and adding a whole bunch more information.
Yeah.
I just let it float for a bit.
I love that you phrased your idea as a question. That really can help kids to stay engaged. And how did she respond to the idea?
She was open to it and agreed that it was a good idea. And after we discussed a few things, that actually became our co-created next step solution.
That's right.
And honey, you and I had already done some brainstorming together behind the scenes, and we'd agreed that this was a doable solution. And we were happy to purchase duplicates of our favorite items to help relieve this frustration that Annika was experiencing. But we talked about it first before I floated that idea.
Yeah, that's part of the beauty of being flexible, right? When kids feel seen and included, even a small win can create a big shift in their attitude. They need to experience that sense of control. And you're exactly right. We also had to make sure that you and I were on the same page of how we would do that.
Yeah. And you know what? Having duplicate items really did help. It's important to be flexible and make decisions that are well thought out.
Right.
What we don't want to do is make decisions in the heat of the moment when our child is struggling or when we're feeling under pressure or emotionally dysregulated, or in an effort to just kind of get it over with and move on or avoid further pain and conflict. Decisions under these circumstances will usually lead to regret down the road.
Right.
I know that all too well because I've been there.
Yep.
And it was in a pressuring moment that I agreed to a scheduling change that I later realized was detrimental to my daughter and to our family. I felt pressure. So if you want to hear more about that painful story, you can check out the link in the show notes to episode 33 and learn from my mistake, please.
And that took place in a much more extreme circumstance where your ex was influencing Annika's request and all that. It was pretty messy. But before that, we did make a very big decision on behalf of Annika, which was, it really required a sacrifice on our part, right?
Absolutely.
We started noticing when she was hitting preteen adolescence that she was pretty focused on her social group. We happened to live in a little town that was about a 25-minute drive away, and we had this 50-50 split. We started realizing, well, shoot, we are going to spend a fortune in gas if we have to keep taking her over to the other town where she went to school and all of her friends, and lots of time in the car. Or we're going to be disappointing her and not able to keep her friendships going on the weeks that she was with us.
And it was frustrating for her.
Yep. And so we decided that we were going to sell the house, and we moved 25 minutes away to the other town, primarily because we wanted to make sure to provide an environment where she could be in her social group and all of that.
We wanted to make things easier for her if we could.
Yeah.
It was a huge sacrifice. I didn't want to leave that house or that city. I would much prefer to be there. I'd still prefer to be there.
I was okay with moving.
It was your idea.
It was. You're right. You know, the deal is, as parents and step-parents, we do have to be willing to make some calculated sacrifices for the well-being of our kids.
Yeah. You know, complex demographics and logistics often come into play when kids are moving between two homes. It's probably not realistic for many couples to relocate like we did.
Yeah, we were lucky.
But the point is to make every effort to understand what your kids experience and do what you can to minimize their burdens by making things easier. Remember, this isn't something your kids would have ever asked for, and for them, it can feel stressful and require a tremendous amount of energy, fortitude, and tolerance to continuously move between two family homes. It really is a lot.
It is.
So if we can ease that burden, by all means, do what you can.
Yep. Managing complex demographics and logistics, it's where many blended couples get stuck, and it's something that we help couples navigate all the time. If you're in the thick of that and you need someone to walk with you, don't hesitate to click the link in the show notes to schedule a free coaching call with us. We would really love to help you find a balanced and thoughtful way forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are your 3 tips to managing a tough parenting conversation when your child seems to be pulling away or requesting some kind of change.
Yep. Tip 1 was to manage your own emotions first, right? Tip 2 was to validate their frustrations or their concerns. And tip 3 was to co-create one step forward.
Now let's answer that question that we threw out earlier. Once kids reach a certain age, should they get to choose where they want to live? This is something we hear from parents, especially when a child hits their tween or early teen years. There's a common assumption out there that once a child turns 12 or 13, that they automatically get to decide which parent they want to live with.
Yeah, but here's the real truth. In pretty much every jurisdiction, that's just not how it works, right? While a judge might consider a child's preferences, especially as they do get older, it's rarely the deciding factor on its own. A child doesn't just get to make a legal custody decision just because of their age. What the courts typically look for is context. Sure, the older a child is, the more weight their opinion could carry, but that opinion doesn't exist in a vacuum. A judge is going to want to consider the wellness of the child, their overall health, as well as educational and developmental milestones. They're also going to want to understand why the child prefers one home over the other.
Yeah, for example, maybe one parent lets them stay up late, skip church, or is relaxed about rules. It could be they're more supportive of the child's sports or creative interests and helps them stay committed to those things that they really enjoy participating in. And the other parent isn't as available or able to support certain activities, and that's creating tension. A child might interpret all of this through a very narrow lens, often without understanding what's going on behind the scenes, right? They may not know that money is tight or that schedules are overwhelming for one parent. All they see is this parent lets me and the other one doesn't. Their viewpoint is immature. It's focused on their own personal comfort and desires. But most judges understand the importance of a child's connection to each parent. That's what they want to preserve. Of course, if there's actual abuse or neglect happening, there are very different concerns and safety considerations to be made by the court. That's a different issue.
So, yes, by the early to mid-teen years, courts are more likely to consider a child's request, but they're also going to look at the bigger picture. Courts typically won't put the full responsibility of decision on a child because doing so is actually emotionally damaging. In fact, we've known adults who got to choose where they were going to live as they were kids, and now they say it left them feeling torn, guilty, and unsure of how to maintain a relationship with the parent they didn't choose. Even if that parent wasn't the easier one to live with, the emotional fallout stuck with them.
Yeah. We've worked with a lot of couples who felt panicked when their child suddenly wanted to change the visitation schedule. And you know what? It's easy in those moments to fall into kind of this black and white thinking. We either have to shut this down completely or we need to give them exactly what they're asking for. But that kind of all or nothing thinking can lead to poor outcomes. What's often needed is a thoughtful middle ground. In other words, what's a small baby step that honors the child's perspective without opening the door to full-on scheduling negotiation?
That's right. Let's say after careful consideration, you genuinely believe that increasing time at the other home might be in your child's best interest for whatever reason. That doesn't mean you have to overhaul the entire schedule. Instead, you might consider a trial adjustment, like adding a few extra hours a week or one additional overnight per month. You can choose something that's manageable that still maintains connection with your home. And be clear with your child, and you need some clarity with your ex, that this is a temporary shift. Let them know that you're going to revisit the arrangement after a set period, maybe in a few months or at the end of the summer, to see how it's working for everyone involved. The key is to set clear boundaries that, hey, this is a trial. It's not a permanent change.
Mm-hmm. And only go down this path if you're confident it's necessary. These kind of decisions can set a precedent, especially if younger children are watching, if you've got some siblings. We want to be intentional, thoughtful, and certain that any change we make is in everyone's best interest.
Yep. The bottom line is, it's not up to our kids to figure out what's best. As the adults, it's our job to work that out for them. Okay. And we want to be clear, we are not attorneys.
Nope.
So if you're talking about this, you please go get advice from your attorney before you just go changing things.
And the laws are different in every state
That's right.
as well.
That's right.
So what's the right approach with all of this? Our kids need a voice, not a vote. Letting them express how they feel and what they want, that's important. But handing over the responsibility of choosing one parent over the other, that's just too heavy a weight for children to carry. Even kids who seem to be mature are still operating with an underdeveloped brain and don't have the capacity to fully understand the bigger picture. At the end of the day, it's up to the parents to set aside differences, seek guidance when needed, and make the best possible decisions together with the child's well-being at the center. This isn't always easy. I know I've made a lot of mistakes in how I handled it when my daughter seemed to be distancing herself from us. But you can learn how to manage these emotionally charged situations well. You really can.
Yeah. If you're walking through a tough season like this and you find yourself in a conversation with a child that just feels like they're pulling away, we do know how hard it is. It can stir up a whirlwind of emotion, doubt, and pressure. But remember, you don't have to cave to your child's demands to show that you care. You can be flexible, provide healthy boundaries, and remain a safe, compassionate parent that they can really talk to, as well as help them to find reasonable solutions to ease their tension. The next time a challenging conversation comes up, try these 3 tips. Regulate your own emotions, listen to understand and validate, and co-create one new action step. And next week, in our Simple Step bonus episode, we're going to uncover some ineffective, unhealthy dynamics that often get stirred up when we feel that our child is distancing themselves and we feel compelled to compete with the other home. So make sure you're following the show in your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss that.
And we know that sometimes one parent might pull the child into the middle of visitation issues, trying to win them over, influence their thinking, or sway their loyalty. We experienced this with my daughter, and it put incredible emotional pressure on her. What every child really wants and needs is to simply stay connected and to love both parents. Unfortunately, some kids get robbed of that. And this is what we'll be tackling in 2 weeks. If you suspect that your child's pulling away from you might be due to your ex's influence and that your child has been put in the middle of things that the adults should be handling, make sure you don't miss that discussion in 2 weeks.
That's right. And for now, we're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.